What is the secret to unlocking your full potential? What makes your idols any different than you? How do you become the person you've always wanted to be in life? This is where you get all of your questions answered. My name is Justin Shank, and I sit down with some of the most epic individuals who are changing the world with their actions in business and in life. We discuss how they did it, why they pushed themselves, and more importantly, how they were able to focus on continuous growth to achieve their dreams. Welcome to the Growth Now movement. Hey guys, really quick, people have been asking me left and right, how do I grow an audience with my podcast? How do I monetize? How do I grow my current brand, whether I'm a Fortune 500 company or an entrepreneur? I've decided to put together an incredible online course and mastermind. Here's the cool part. You get it for free for 30 days. Head over to launchfixgrow.com and sign up today, and you actually get the whole entire course and the first 30 days in the mastermind for free. And I think you guys are going to absolutely love the community that we're building over there. Launchfixgrow.com. Go get it. Michael Robison is a strategic business consultant and brand development innovator with a diverse background in finance, sales, development, marketing, communications, and staffing. He was also recently named one of the top leaders of 2018 by Entrepreneur Magazine. Titles are one thing, but who you are on the inside is all that matters. And Michael is somebody who is set out to change the world in a positive way. I think you guys are going to really love his story about marriage and adopting children and why he left the church. Michael went from running one of the fastest growing churches in America to just straight up leaving his job overnight. And I think you guys are going to find it really interesting, his reason why for doing that. This conversation I had with Michael is deep, fun, insightful, and I think you guys are really going to enjoy it. Now, before we dive into it, I want you guys to head over to gnmlive.com and get your tickets for Growth Now Movement Live. They are flying off the shelf right now. I highly recommend getting a VIP ticket so you can rub shoulders with all the speakers and all the movement makers that I'm inviting to this event. You guys are absolutely going to be blown away. Now, without further ado, I give to you Michael Robison. Michael, welcome to the Growth Now Movement, man.
Yeah, it's good to be here, dude. Thanks for having me on.
No, absolutely. So it's funny because you and I spoke at The Thing with Terry Weaver, but we didn't meet. So I flew out early. You came in late and our paths did not cross. But we were able to connect 2 weeks ago and you told me your story and I was like, dude, you got to be on the show. And so I'm excited to share this conversation with my audience and have them hear not only what you've been through, but how you got through it and what you're doing to change lives and approach life in a way that is not necessarily unique, but game changing.
Sure.
And I think that is something that people need to hear and hopefully start to implement. But why don't you kind of introduce yourself to my audience by saying, who is Michael now? And then later we'll unpack how you got there.
Sure. Yeah. Well, I mean, now I run a company called the D5 Group, which is really just a strategic business consulting group. We do everything from just internal communications to brand development, marketing, a little bit of everything. I would say the one thing we're maybe experts at, although I hate using that term, but I would say that if we're trying to say we have an expertise in anything, it's, corporate communications. We're really solid about that. That comes from my background of having led multiple organizations. And then, and I just love it. I get the opportunity to invest in some really incredible leaders, high level leaders, influential leaders, huge corporate entities, which is just crazy to me given my background. And I love it. I mean, I wake up every day. I'm super excited about what I get to do. And then beyond that, dude, I'm a husband, I'm a father. I've got 1 million kids running around. Life's good. I get to kick it in the town that I grew up in, which most people might scratch their head at that. It just happens to be that the Nashville area is such a hot place right now. So yeah. The funny thing is I'm not into all the trend in the hot, but I'm here. So, you say it, it's like it's got a cool factor to it. I'm like, it had no cool factor when I was growing up, but
that's awesome.
It has it now. So I don't know, man, that's it. It's pretty simple and, I just am able to enjoy what I do. I think, one of the coolest things, and I've said this a million times in the last probably month and a half, is that, the business that I've been building for, a few years now and really hardcore for the last year has grown enough that I think my proudest accomplishment in this whole thing is that my wife now works with me. She doesn't have to work another job. Like, I've got other people that work with me and have worked for me, but the reality is I love that my wife's home with me because she's way smarter than I am. And she keeps me, from doing really crazy, stupid things. So, even though we joke back and forth who actually works for who, it's really cool. So it's been a cool journey, man.
That's great. And a lot of people can't do that. Like, a lot of people can't work with their significant others in any way, shape, or form because it can cause a lot of issues. So kudos to you guys for being able to do that, and then saying you're enjoying it. Is something a little bit different, which is really cool. Plus, living in the Nashville area, hopefully you do have an exit strategy because real estate market's exploding.
Yes,
so your return on investment will be really good.
Oh man, listen, it's nuts. As a matter of fact, one of my clients is getting ready to launch a huge luxury boutique real estate firm here in Nashville. And, we're sitting yesterday and this was always an indicator growing up, this is a bread and butter town. Things just weren't super expensive. It was very affordable. And it's funny because Nashville keeps getting it's an affordable city kind of thing. And I'm telling you, it's not. Like, I don't know who perpetuates that lie in the world. Cause I asked yesterday, I was like, okay, so in the areas with growth, like what's the floor? Like where's the starter homes at now? And like the cheap builder grade junk that's going up around here is going for like 450 to 500,000.
Crazy.
But the average, like a home that my family would want to live in one of those up and coming areas right now, I'd have to spend pretty close to $1 million just to get my foot in the door. And so it's a hot market, man. It's crazy to me. And it's really, I appreciate when you have people who are honest about the perspective. He's like, it's a stupid market. Just throw a number out there. You're probably going to get it, that kind of thing, which, hey, look, if you're a seller, that's fantastic. If you're a buyer coming in because you sold your $4 million, 800 square foot house in the middle of LA, it's a win for you. But for the average guy coming in here, it's crazy, man.
Yeah. It's just not happening. I was in Nashville about a year ago. And kind of really learned your market because I like whenever I travel, I like finding locals and talking to them and like they showed me like apartment complexes that were like $3,000 a month for an apartment, and I'm like, for a 1-bedroom, and they're like, yeah, like that's just insane to me. Like, why is
Manhattan? It's like Manhattan.
It's nuts,
I keep
man.
saying it. Downtown, they just ran because we got 2 new luxury high rises, right? So the one bedrooms down there now are starting, I think it's $3,750.
Crazy.
And it's just, you've got a view, but like, really? I want, like, no, thank you.
Yeah.
Like $3,750, you can have the mortgage on the $500,000 house if that's what, like it just doesn't, I don't know. Crazy numbers, man. Listen, from an economic standpoint, for the time being, and I will say this about Nashville's almost always been in a bubble. So even when we went through the big recession in 2008, and not to say that it couldn't happen here, but we very rarely felt the depression that happens when major financial things ebb and flow in the nation.
Yeah.
Nashville's been pretty steady. And so, that's the one thing I will say in this market. And, anybody who's thinking, hey, let's go make Nashville home, it's probably a good choice. It's just going to be costly, but it's for probably not a bad choice.
Yeah. So for those tuning in for the first time, this is not a real estate podcast. No. This is not a Nashville podcast. Yeah. But the thing is, this is a podcast about growth and transition and overcoming adversity. And really kind of giving people hope for their future. But the crazy thing is, you weren't always in consulting. You weren't always in the business world. You used to be a pastor. And I think that's such an interesting transition. And when you and I talked 2 weeks ago on the phone, we talked about a guy named Rob Bell who has really kind of blown up transitioning out of the church. And you're somebody who, not in the same model, but you're doing something very similar where you kind of left organized religion because you're like, what's going on? I want to talk about that for a little bit because that topic to me is near and dear to my heart because of how I grew up. And it's actually something I've never talked about on this show. So I never talked about really kind of my views on faith versus religion. And how I grew up in the church because my grandfather was a pastor, and how I don't go to church now because how I'm viewing the American church. So let's talk about that a little bit. How did you get into what made you decide to be a pastor? And then, obviously then transitioning out.
Yeah. So, I grew up in the South. And so I kind of think it's really important to always kind of put that out there because Southern culture is just kind of like up until maybe the last 5 or 10 years, really. In Southern culture, church isn't just church isn't just something that is like ingrained in you. Like it is a cultural norm. Like you go to church on Sunday mornings, you go to church, various nights of the week. It depends on the kind of church you grew up in. And so it's just like it was expected, like normal conversation in the grocery store, the gas station, where it's like you would get to know somebody. And one of your default questions is, where do you guys go to church? Like it's just a question you ask, but it's become, that's become obviously much more rare as a conversation piece. Now, in my case, I think what's really interesting is, I grew up a preacher's kid, a preacher's grandkid, a preacher's great grandkid. Like,
you're just like, that's what you're going to do. You're going to become a preacher. You have no other choice.
To some extent. And, the really funny thing to me is that over the years, I watched my dad pastor and I watched my grandfather and I watched all these people very closely. And probably by the time I was 12, 13, 14 years old, I was the one saying, never, I'm never doing it. It's not happening. Like, and I joke about it because I also used to say, like, I'm not going into the family business, because that was always kind of my, slang term for everything.
Yeah.
But, like you said, I was a pastor. So obviously
you tapped out.
I can say a lot of things, but, I think I think, this is something I probably never really, well, I've unpacked it, but just in kind of, friend circles or that kind of stuff, or just talking in leadership. But I think the decision to go into ministry, I met my wife when we were in high school. We met in the church youth group. As a matter of fact, I joke all the time. The first Sunday, my family and I had decided to attend another church. My dad was not officially on staff at a church when I was a junior in high school. And so we walked into this church on a Sunday morning, and this just best way I can say it is the way I was thinking then. This hot chick was getting baptized up in the front of the church, and I saw her getting baptized, and I literally looked at my little brother and I said, I think I'm going to marry that girl. Like, I didn't even hesitate. And it's crazy because we didn't start dating for a good while after that. Long story short, here we are 21 years later, doing life together. We both fell in love with the fact that we saw, we grew up in a kind of a small country church at the time, and we didn't have a pastor for everything. We had these great leaders who just spent time with us. So when we were in high school, college, that kind of stuff, like we just had good couples that invested in us as young adults. And I think for my wife and I, we decided that the choice to go do ministry was really like, we saw the value it gave us. So we thought, well, let's go give that value. And obviously, look, it would be wrong if I didn't say it. It's like, it was really easy for me to step in and do ministry. There wasn't much of anything on this planet that I didn't know better. Like, live, eat, breathe, grow up in it. I mean, I knew the ins, the outs, the whole nine. So, it's just like anybody who grows up with a family business. Like, you just know the family business, you get in it. And I did love it. I also want to be very clear. Like, this was not so I could get a paycheck. Like, because the paychecks in ministry suck. Like, no two ways about
There's
it.
No mortgage though.
Right. Well, no, there isn't. Most of the time in the Southern Baptist world, I didn't get the house. I didn't get all that other stuff. No. I mean, so over the years, ebb and flow, because I wrestled with it. I always wrestled with it. I had churches are messy and crazy and difficult. And I'm sure we'll talk about a little bit of that. Like, even, in my mid 20s, I got let go at a church because of politics and all kinds of stuff that was going on. And I left ministry for a season. I went and was making a very high 6-figure salary in a different type of business in my mid late 20s. And I still went back to the ministry world and took a job under $50,000. Like, and had to have the mortgage, the bills.
So what was it that called you back?
People. It was always people. I love people. And I think, so what was interesting is going back, I went back to the same area, to a different church. And I had a lot of the same people that we had relationships, friendships, that kind of stuff with. And here's something that, maybe this is worth unpacking, but it's at least a statement that I think will resonate with anybody who hears it. And it doesn't just apply to churches. I just used to say this a lot as a leader in the church. People always leave churches. People rarely leave relationships. So when an organization, this can be true in business, this can be true in just a friend group, this can be true in your business, right? Like, people are not as loyal as you think to an organization, but they become very loyal to relationship.
Yeah, makes sense.
So, that I think that right there was the big key factors. That relationship always kind of pulled me back in, because I really do love being in the midst of people's lives. I don't like drama. I don't like all the craziness, but I love being an integral part of people's lives. Just because I think that's where value is. I think it's where I've learned the most. It's where I've grown the most. It's where I've been challenged the most. And so I love it. And a lot of those principles of what I had and what I did as a pastor have translated over into business. I think they're a big piece of why I have success in what I do, because my clients today, it's really funny to me is some of my really high level clients, I was on a call the other night with a client for over 3 hours, which is very unusual.
Yeah.
But I would say probably close to 2 hours of that call was kind of more like life coaching and just kind of processing life, which is just the pastoral thing that is in me.
Sure.
That just kind of came back out in that moment. And, being able to talk a client through just living life. And so that aspect of it, I loved. And so it would always draw me back in. But I can say this very assuredly. My wife should be sitting next to me in this statement right now, but like our greatest pain points, our greatest hardships came from being there. And that's not a knock on the church. That's just reality.
Yeah.
And I think at some point we actually had to make a decision that the healthiest way for us to live life was to not be in that world, not to live in that box. And so we made the transition. That transition happened. It's been a little over 3 years ago that we've just fully said that, no more. I've learned, and, we can dig into faith too, but like I've also learned, I never say never with God, because, God, however you look at God, the creator, the higher being, whatever, like, I just think that this, like, there's this thing that oversees us that sometimes has a sense of humor. So I've just learned not to say never. But we just made a decision that the wisest, healthiest thing for us to do for ourselves, for our marriage, for our family, for our life was to take what we believe, the principles that we love, the values that we've developed, and do those in life outside the box of a religious organization.
Yeah. So what is it about the religious organization that was like, okay, the part that's happening on the inside, meaning what it's meant to be, seems really great. But
right.
What's happening isn't. So what was the moment? Was there a moment? Was there a thing that happened?
No, I think there's a series of moments. I'm a very resilient human. Like, I'm the kind of guy, like, I'm not that brave. So please decipher this statement or this analogy is what it is. But when I watch some movie like, say, Braveheart, right, and you see some dude on the battlefield like get stabbed with a battle axe like 7 times, and he keeps getting back up because he's going to win this fight, and he's going to die. Like, there's no way this dude's going to survive, right? That was kind of the way I just approached the whole thing. Like, these pain points, these hardships would happen, and I found myself continuously going back and saying, I'll take one more hit from the battle axe, but here's the thing that I will say that I would say is a kind of an awakening moment to say this is not who I am. I'm a real big believer that in a couple of very strong statements that the idea of faith that I believe in, that I was raised in, the core tenet says that everybody's welcome. Like, everybody's welcome. The doors need to be wide open and everybody's welcome.
Yeah.
And that nobody's perfect, right? The problem with most religion, and I'm not even going to use the term church, religion is that we've become religion has become this behavior modification system, a 12-step process. And like, we're cool that you might have had mess, but once you step inside the organization, you have a very limited amount of time to get your stuff together to really polish it up. And I've said a million times, like, what is better or worse? That an addict becomes aware of their issue, or that they lose the addiction? Because I think awareness is far more powerful than overcoming an addiction. And look, I'm all about overcoming addiction. Don't get me wrong in that statement. The problem with the church says it's not about awareness. It's about fixing the problem. And I don't think that, obviously my faith coming out of the church itself has, a Christian background, the key figure being Jesus. And I just don't see a narrative when I read the scriptures that says Jesus came to fix it. He came to be present in it, to walk with people, to open his arms, to say everybody's welcome, nobody's perfect, and he's the one who's going to take care of it, not us.
Yeah.
So what I found and what my wife found is probably the thing that doesn't get talked about enough is, as a pastor, I'm as human as anybody else. So the problem would be that I would struggle sometimes with bouts of anxiety, depression, sin, if you want to put the term on it, of just struggling with different things in my life. And when I would make a mistake or I would have a problem or anything would happen, there was no way I, as a human, had the right to come in the door and go to my team, to my leadership, to the community that's around me, to go, I got all this stuff going on. I'm struggling. I have this problem. Because the minute I do that, I'm out.
Yeah.
Like, I have to be quote unquote perfect in order to do it. And I went, that's the problem is that if any of us come up against the standard of perfection, we check out.
Yeah.
Like, when you tell me I've got to have it right, I got to be perfect, I'm done. I think about this a lot when I go every morning at 4:00 in the morning. I'm at the gym, I'm working out, and the gym is, and I go to Planet Fitness. So it's not like I'm going to some bodybuilder's haven here.
No,
right?
no grunting.
Yeah. No grunting, and they serve pizza. So, that's the apex of fitness. But, when you look around in the gym, it's really funny. Even this morning, I'm sitting there, and I'm a pretty strong guy. I'm pretty, I take care of myself. And, and a lot of times you're in there and you look around and you're like, you standardize yourself against people, right?
Mm-hmm.
This dude walks in today and I'm telling you, ripped from head to toe. Just one of those dudes, like, you cover a fitness magazine kind of thing. And literally I found myself in my head going, why am I here? Like,
yeah.
I'm here 90 minutes a day, 7 days a week without fail. As a matter of fact, in the last 70 days, I've had 2 days off from the gym. Like,
that's crazy.
I eat clean. I'm super careful about what I eat. Like, I'll never look like that dude. Now, that's not me being a defeatist for myself. Like, physically, I just, like, for whatever reason, genetics or whatever, like, I know I'll never look like that. But see, the thing is I see that guy and I instantly, my mindset goes, I cannot achieve that. So why do I try? And I think that's what happens a lot in the religious world, is that we say on the outside, like, hey, everybody's welcome. Nobody's perfect. Come on in here. We're going to love you as you are. But you walk in the door and then this like portrait of perfection is set in front of you. And instantly there's this kind of like, oh crap, like I can't, I can't.
Yeah.
So there's this checkout, but then we're trying because we want to be included. Like, our greatest need as a human is to be fully accepted for who we are. And when you're told that as a sales tactic to get you in the door, but then you walk in the door and you're actually not okay the way you are, it destroys people. And that was the big checkout for me, is that eventually I just got to the point, because I was trying to build churches. I mean, I pastored churches that hit the top 100 fastest growing church list and all these,
I just love that they have those lists.
Yeah, it's crazy. And
like that's the greatest example of, like, okay, this is a business.
Right.
Like, you have lists where you're competing against each other, which is, again, a non, like, if you look at Jesus, like, that's a non-Jesus and God thing, right? So, like, that's crazy. But, like, you've said a lot that I want to unpack a couple things real quick. So first, I want to apologize for walking in the gym and intimidating you this morning.
Well, I'll only forgive you.
Wasn't me, by the way, obviously. But in seriousness, you had mentioned something earlier about how, especially as the pastor of the church, you had to be perfect, right? Or, like, being aware of the addiction and working towards getting better versus just not doing anything about it is completely different. Right. I think the thing about church and religion is that they all pretend to be perfect. Like, that for me was one of the things where it was like, even as a young kid, I think I was aware of, like, all these people are not really perfect, and yet they're pretending to be perfect. And if I saw them outside of the church, they probably wouldn't talk to me and my family, but they would talk to me and my family in the church, because that's what they're supposed to be doing. And there's this fraudulent thing. But the reason I bring this up is because this is happening now in the entrepreneur world.
Oh, yeah.
Where people are pretending to do certain things. Like, I was bowling not that long ago at a VIP event with another podcaster, and people can unpack this. If they want to find out who it is, I mentioned bowling with this person. I won't say his name this time, but they can figure it out. And how he pretended to like me because we were on a couple different lists together. but I know he doesn't like me. And I'm like, dude, I don't like you. I'm not going to pretend to like you.
Right.
So how do we walk in, and maybe you don't have this answer, but how do we walk in integrity, kind of like you did when you left the church? Because you didn't share that part of the story, and I want you to.
Yeah.
When you left the church, like, how do you walk in integrity even when people around you are judging you? And how do you not pretend to be something that you're not?
I think part of it, here's an answer that's not fun to hear, but I think it's first step is courage. Like, if I'm going to do that, if I'm going to be 100% true to the things that are deep within me and the things I know to be true, it takes a lot of courage to step into that. So, I think I say this with my clients. I have a client right now who's deeply invested in a particular part of his venture, and it's kind of stupid. I mean, it's just, I'm sorry, like, he's invested in an old idea deeply, and he's still putting money into it. And I finally just said to him the other day, the reason you're not seeing the results you want is that you have now poured so much into something that has no value. And so I just need you to know, like, there's a reason I am actually less involved in this piece of your business is because I don't believe in it. Like, and that there's a lot of courage in that because when I say he's deeply invested, I'd say 70% of his resources are in that.
Wow.
So in that statement, I actually run the risk of that client looking at me and saying, hey, you're not the best fit. And that may be true. But in this instance, that courage to make that statement and not worry about the outcome actually turned out to be good in the sense that he's like, hey, thanks for the honesty, the candor. Like, this is good. Let's unpack it. What can we do? How can we change this? And when you look at, religion in the church, like, for instance, when you say, like, when I left the church, I got hired on by one of those fastest growing, big mega churches, and came in the door, and they had this whole diatribe that was just going on about how we want to be the church for the people who don't go to church. And that's who I've always been. Like, I joke all the time. As a matter of fact, in our interview process with this church, when I was looking at the position to be the lead pastor, I made the very clear statement, I'm the Pied Piper for the messy and broken. You put me into a room, and the most jacked up humans in that room will always gravitate towards me. I don't know what that is, because I'm your typical white bread, middle class dude with, like, I've got some tattoos and that kind of stuff, but, like, I don't come across as the rebel or anything like that. But that's my circle. It's always been my circle.
Yeah.
So I'm very clear with this, right? So we go in, and I do exactly what I do. And with no time at all, those people, and you can put any label you want on that, LGBT, different races, different religious backgrounds, all of that. So, I mean, literally all of it. They start showing up in numbers. And within no time at all, I'm in meetings with the elders at the church saying, these are not the people that we want. And, I kept asking the question, like, then define who it is, because you were very clear over here and now you're not. And basically they came to me at one point and said, look, if you'll change what you're doing, you can maintain your position. You can stay right here. They were paying me a very healthy salary, very much take care of my family and enjoy my life. I had a lot of freedom. Like, it was not a hard position to be in. And I just had to make the courage statement to say, no, I know who I am. I know what I'm put here to do as a human, not just, not even as a leader or business or vision, or take all that out. Like, I know who I am at the core. And I literally finally said to one guy on a phone call one day, I said, let me make this very clear. I feel misled. You feel like this is different than you want. I'm not going to change. So I only see one outcome in this conversation. So I hope you're prepared to handle it with integrity and to move through it right. And that conversation occurred, and I think it was like 10 days later, I got handed my papers, and that was it. And, a lot of times when you look at that, like, it meant I'd moved my family halfway across the country. We've made a lot of changes in life. Gave up a lot of good things that were going on in order to give this a shot, and had to move. And we moved back. It was a no-brainer. We'd only been there for a few months. So it's not like I was like, crap, now what am I going to do? I'm going to stay. I don't want to stay there. I'd been pastoring the largest church in town. Everybody knew. It ended up everywhere that I was leaving after only a few months. The whole messiness. And you could take that as a major defeat and it could push you down. But I kind of walked out of there and went, you know what? I'm super charged up because I just stayed true to me. And now I will say this, it did take me probably a year to kind of get my bearings about like, okay, so now what is next? Because I'm now kind of drawing the line in the sand and saying, this kind of answered the question for me. Like, this is not the healthy, the right, the good place to be. So now who am I? What am I going to do? And what is going to define my life for the next season? Maybe for the rest of my life. I don't know. I don't like to think that far because look, if any of us can tell each other what's going to happen 5 years from now, first of all, you're full of crap. Second of all, you're delusional. And third, you probably need to check your medication because I don't know what's happening 5 weeks, 5 months, especially not 5 years down the road. So, just one step at a time. But I think it's just courage. I think really and truly in anything that we do in life, even as an entrepreneur, you get into that world because I left that world. I went and founded a fintech company, went gangbusters for a while. It was amazing. And you're in that tech startup world with VCs and money flowing all over the place and things are happening. It's exciting. There's a lot of like that adrenaline and dopamine thing going on and people are trying to impress one another, the fake it till you make it mentality. And there is a lot of similarity between what I would experience in the church and what you get there. And I love getting into a room with people and going, look, I got nothing. Like we'd walk in the room and they're like, hey, we've got this, and this. You should invest in this. I'd walk in the room and like, I got an idea and that's it. Like I got nothing. Like I think it's good. I think you should be a part of it. And what was really interesting to me is the conversation would shift in a very positive way when you walk in the room and go, I don't know. I don't know what I'm doing. I mean, look, I founded a financial technology firm. I'm not a finance guy, at all. I'm not a tech guy. I mean, I know how to hack a website together, and only because they make the do-it-yourself tools now.
It's so easy, man. It's so easy.
Yeah, like if I had to code something, it's literally not going to happen.
Yeah.
So the idea that I was sitting as a CEO of a financial technology firm, and then I found myself doing appearances on shows like NASDAQ and, ended up in these things. And I'm like, this is not I never would have designed this. The reason I ended up in a lot of those places, those conversations is because I was the only one willing to come in the room and go, I literally don't have a clue. I just know that I have a really great idea that I think matters.
Yeah.
And I want to share my idea. Maybe it'll work, maybe it won't. And in the end, it didn't work.
Yeah.
It didn't work, and that's okay. And actually, it didn't work for a whole plethora of reasons that have nothing to do with the idea not being good. The idea was great. But maybe part of it is I was doing things, and I had to get honest about doing things that I wasn't meant to do. Right.
Sure.
So I think that's got to be true about everything that we do in life. We could, I could easily pick it up and go back and be a pastor again tomorrow. It'd be really easy for me to do. I'd jump in the flow. I'd be miserable, but I could do it. Like if it was just the job, I'd go punch the clock, go do my thing. I'd probably be pretty good at it because I have a great track record at it. But it's not really what I'm supposed to be doing. So the courage for me at this stage of my life is go build something that you love and just grit and grind through it. And that's what I've done.
Yeah.
I mean, since the financial tech thing didn't work out for a little over a year, I've been back building my main thing, and it's, 6 months was just like hell. It was like, how am I going to pay the bills? How am I going to make this happen? I got a ton of kids at home. I have, I live in a pricey area that we know we want to live. So we're not compromising that. Like how do you do this? But you just got to have the courage to grit and grind through it. Right.
Yeah. I love that. By the way, you are like the oldest 30-something-year-old I've ever talked to. like you married 20-something years, ton of kids, 19,000 different lifetimes of careers, successful in most of them. It's crazy.
Epic failure at a few.
Yeah, well, of course, but I think that's part of the journey, right? Like I've had my failures in business as well, and and in life and relationship and all that stuff. And it's just so funny because I think that if people don't see your headshot when they're listening to this episode, they'll be like, "How old is this guy?" Like it's crazy.
Well, it's really funny is I got a friend that we're with all the time. And one day they came over, they're dropping their kids off. And I'm like, this guy's super successful. Like he got one of the top radio shows in the country. Like this dude's got it. I mean, he's killing it, and he's actually a couple years older than I am. Right. So I walk out of the car and he made some comment about, it was a good week. I had some press come out, some different things. He's like, man, you make you you really help me strive to the next level. So when I'm your age, and I looked at him and I was like, how old do you think I am? And he's like, I don't know, like late 40s, something like that. I'm like, dude, I'm about to jack slap you. I'm going to rip you out of your truck right now and beat
you don't
down.
look old.
Like, I'm not like, dude, 40, I cannot wait to turn 40, and I'm not that far off from it. Like, I'm ready, because I think there's just something that comes with it. Like, I think a lot of people freak out about it, but I've always been the youngest guy in the room, and I'm tired of it.
Yeah.
But the funny thing is, now I will say this, going into the tech world a couple years ago, I became the oldest guy in the room. So there's the flip side of that too.
In that world, yeah, you were the old dude. Yeah, for sure.
But I think part of it is, look, you know, the reason somebody says what you just said, like, kind of like the oldest 30-something-year-old, I think part of it is I really do have like zero risk aversion. And I think it took me a long time to own the fact that I really was born to be an entrepreneur. Because I think as an entrepreneur, you just have to have the ability, like, I got to do this. And I'm not even trying to answer the question, like, what if it fails? Because the reality is it's a 50-50. Actually, the statistics are way worse than 50-50. I wish it was 50-50. But the reality is you just have to kind of go into it. It's not about if this fails. It's just, what do I do today? Yeah. And that's kind of the mentality to live with. Like, and there's good and bad to that, right? Like, you know, if somebody does ask me, like, how are you going to plan for this in 12 months? Like, that's why I have a team. You know, that's why I have my wife. Like, they think that way. I couldn't lead and do what I do. I wouldn't have had the experiences. I've literally traveled all over the world. I've had experiences that some people don't ever get to have, much less get to have until they go to retirement. Or, you know, it's really interesting. I've come to the place in life, like, I love to travel, but I've also come to the place now where it's like, I used to want it all the time. You know, I want to go experience this, see this culture, do this. And I created jobs. I created situations. I created scenarios. I led into places that gave me all of those things. And it's funny now, like, if this was my last day on the planet, I'm good. Like, I don't feel like there's very few things that I would say I haven't accomplished. And the things that I haven't accomplished would literally only be due to the time that I've been on the planet versus the time it would take to actually get there.
Yeah. I mean, you've worked for fulfillment. And happiness.
Absolutely.
And I think that that's what I do as well. And why I also say, like, if I died today, I would be okay. Like, I've had amazing experiences. I've done incredible things, but it's because we wake up and we live for today.
That's right.
You know what I mean? Yeah, of course. Like, as entrepreneurs, you know, you and I have big visions, and we know where we want to go, but we also know that we live for today. And I think that at least from an entrepreneurial financial standpoint, that was my biggest shift when I left my job, going from, okay, this is my money for the next 2 weeks. Like, I lived paycheck to paycheck as an employee because I knew it was just coming. And when I became an entrepreneur with almost very little in the bank, I was like, I'm just going to do it. It's a completely different mindset shift of like, today is today. How do I pay for, how do I live for today? But the craziest thing is, people think that's so stressful, but I'm so much happier.
Yeah, dude, I'm telling you, I just told my wife the other day, I was like, I got a couple of things that I want to accomplish. You know, there's some things like our bills are paid, our life is good. Like, it's solid. I'm not wealthy. I don't have a ton of money in the bank, but life's good. But it's really interesting is the mentality I think that shifts is, I got these things I want to accomplish. So that means I need to do X, Y, and Z, hustle a little bit, and I'll get there. Like, it's in my control. It's not somebody else's responsibility. And so I can go, you know, if I need 1,000, 5,000, 10,000, you know, whatever, put a number out there, that I kind of know what I need to do to get there.
Sure.
And it doesn't mean I'm going to accomplish it, but I know within my means what it probably will take for me to get there. And it really is a different shift. And, you know, I used to always say, because I've owned a number of businesses along the way, even being a pastor, I always had my hand in a lot of things, but, I used to say all the time, like, I don't want to work for somebody, but it came out of like youth and hubris and ego. Like, I think I'm that good, you know, I'm smart, I'm all these things. Now I'm in the place where it's like, I don't want to work for somebody because I actually, even when it is stressful, because there's definitely stress in the entrepreneur game, I am responsible for the outcome. And I have to grow, and I have to learn, and I have to develop along the way. And I am responsible for it. The good, the bad, the ugly. But I love the ability to have that and to challenge myself. And so now when I say I can't work for somebody else, It comes a lot more from the process of, if I go to work for somebody else, I'm sacrificing my ability to grow and experience life at a higher level.
Yeah, I love all that stuff, man. So on your journey from 14-year-old kid, I don't want to be a pastor to successful entrepreneur working with high-end celebrities and sports athletes, etc. What was your biggest lesson? What's your biggest takeaway so far?
You know, honestly, and there's nothing profound. Just do. Look, here's the cliche statement. This is the best way I know to answer this. Do what you can with what you have right where you are. Mm. So at each level of the game, I remember, like, I'm a writer. So early on in this stage of building my deal, like, I know myself, I'm a great strategist. And that's what I love the most, is going in and working with corporate teams or entrepreneurs and helping them develop a business strategy, their messaging and marketing and all this. Like, that's the stuff that charges me up. I think I'm pretty good at it. But the funny thing is that because that wasn't my thing, it's not like I could just throw up a sign and go, hey, hire me because I'm good, you know? Yeah. So early on, the gig that I found that was paying the bills was writing business plans. So I'm writing these 30, 40-page documents to help somebody go raise money. And it is strategy, and it is, but it's not the people side of it. It's not the creative side of it. It is the doldrum work of just plunge your way through it. Some of these business plans, I had one that's 57 pages, right? And you're going through this, and it's technical language, and there's math, and there's all this stuff that you got to do, and you got to write it out. And while I enjoy the detail of it, I hate the work of it, right? Mm. And so I found myself that particular plan took me the better part of 30 days to get through the revisions, the writing, the creation, the research, all the different things that had to go into it. And I can remember so many days at the end of the day, I would have been sitting in front of my computer writing, researching, and putting all this stuff together for 8-10 hours a day. And, but 7 days a week, not, my 5 days a week, clocking my 40 hours, that you get to the end of the week and you're like, I kind of hate this. Like, this sucks. I don't really enjoy this. And yet, if I'm going to accomplish some of my greater things, I just have to be diligent with what I have right now. Because if I do this well and execute well, it gives me the credence to take the next step and to get a little more validity, a little more social proof, or whatever term you want to put on it. And that's what's kind of lent itself to now I serve those clients well. So when my celebrity clients, my, professional athletes, these high level clients, or these big corporate entities like BP or Coca-Cola have come along and hired me, it's because I can point back to Joe Schmo entrepreneur who I wrote a 57-page document for, who took that 57-page document and raised $100 million for his startup, and it worked. And I hated every minute of that job, but that guy says, this guy will work hard for you, right? Yeah. So I would say in that whole thing is I just learned you just can't slack. Like, you've got to work hard. There's no excuse. And what's interesting, and I know even before we started recording, I was telling you there are seasons and spells where I work so hard, and then there's times where I wake up and I'm like, I've accomplished and I've done all these things I set out to do. And there's days where I do have way more extra time than I ever imagined I would have. And I kind of feel guilty about it. But that's, what's interesting when you talk about that whole persona in the entrepreneur world, there's this whole idea, we hear influencers like a Gary Vaynerchuk or all these guys say, these entrepreneurs go out there and they talk about accomplishing these big dreams, and they sit around and play Fortnite all day or whatever they do. The funny thing is that if you really do your game well, you actually will have time to go play Fortnite.
Amen.
But it may not happen for 6 months, you know what I'm saying? Or 6 years or 16 years. I don't know. Everybody's journey is different. There's no formula. But, the reality is that you can't start by having all of this persona of I'm so in control of my schedule. The reality is, as an entrepreneur, I'm in charge of who I choose as a client. Once I've chosen the client, I'm not in charge of my schedule. Yeah. They are. What do they need? What did I commit to serve? What did I commit to do? Those things determine my schedule, not me. I get to determine whether or not I'm going to do the work. That's what I'm in control of.
I love that. I love all that, man. So I wrap up all these episodes with 5 rapid fire questions. But before we get there, how do people get a hold of you? I do know for a fact that high-end people and celebrities listen to my show. So how do they book you and work with you and all that fun stuff?
Here's the thing that I will tell you. Anybody who's looking for me, this is what they need to be looking for. they're at a place where they haven't figured out how to unpack their vision or their mission, right? And they haven't been able to put legs on it. That's really what I do. Whether it's, I come in and specialize in doing 2-day workshops with teams. We did a corporate alignment with BP Global, with their corporate innovations team. I've done it with individual entrepreneurs, everything. I think it's, if you're looking to kind of get your team on the same page, or you're just trying to get yourself on the same page because you got all these ideas in your head and your heart, but you don't know how to get them out there and formulate them. That's what we specialize in. We happen to do a lot of other stuff when it comes to marketing, development, digital development. So I would say that first and foremost, so people know what they might be engaging with. And then as far as finding us, look, it's really simple. The website is D5, the letter D, the number 5, plans.com. So D5plans.com. And then, for me personally, I drop a bunch of senseless mess all over social media, but maybe it's valuable. I don't know. But it's just my name. All my handles are just my name. So it's at Michael Robison. So, and I always say there's no N in the middle. Everybody gets
Robison.
Wrong, so it's Robison. Yes. As a matter of fact, probably most people translate it as Robison, and it's not, but it's how it comes across. But anyway, but yeah, I mean, they can get in touch. I would love to connect. I think one of my things is I love giving time to entrepreneurs and leaders who are just trying to process, and we may not be the right person. The reality is I tell people all the time, I'll tell you what we do, I'll unpack what we do, and then really I'd love for you to go find 3 other people that might be able to service you and figure out who's going to be the best fit. Like, don't just come to me and assume I'm the best fit, because I'm also not coming to you assuming that I need you as a client either.
Right. No, I love that, man. So we'll get into 5 rapid fire questions. Some are fun, some are serious. I just ask you this. Answer within 1 word or at the most 1 sentence. Are you ready?
You got it.
All right.
Let's do it.
So the first one is, the topic that comes up with my life a lot is, how do you surround yourself with the right people? How do you make sure that your 5 people that you surround yourself with are super important? So what's the one non-negotiable trait that you say, all my friends need this one trait? What is it?
Availability.
I love that. That's actually really good. Nobody's ever said that one. That one's really good.
Yeah. Availability. What good is a friend if they're not available?
Yeah, that's true. I guess they're not really a friend if they're not available.
No.
I guess that's just the reality.
Yeah.
For sure.
Yeah.
So if you were on death row, what would be your last meal?
Oh, that's a good one. Haitian food. That's something to unpack some other time, but I've spent the last 20 years traveling in Haiti. I have residency the whole night. Like, I love Haitian culture. I have a kid from Haiti. Like, it's deep. So yeah, there's very specific Haitian food that would be my last meal. No doubt. That's
cool. To stay with the food theme, if you could have dinner with one person, living or dead, who would it be?
Ooh, good one. Wow. Man, that one's tough. Who would it be? Actually, the funny thing is, right now, I think that I would just answer right now. Actually, it would be Tony Robbins.
Really? That's interesting. We'll talk about that off the record. Next question. At the end of your life, if you could only be remembered for one sentence, what would that be?
I'll give you one word. How about that?
Yeah.
Generosity.
I love that.
That's it.
So obviously this podcast is called The Growth Now Movement. So I wrap up every single episode with this one question, and that is, in your life, what has been your biggest moment of growth?
My biggest moment of failure, by far. Every time I fail, it's a chance, and failure's big and small. They grow me every time. Every time. I don't have a choice. You're going to die or you're going to grow. One or the other.
That's true. That is so freaking true, man. Michael, thank you so much for coming on and sharing your story and sharing your time and just doing what you do and truly being that generous human being and really being able to share your time with anybody who needs help and anybody who needs to reach out and ask a couple questions. Just thank you so much, man.
Absolutely, dude. Thank you.
Thank you guys so much for being a part of the Growth Now movement. This is how you can really help me out. If you guys enjoyed this episode, please share it out on Facebook, Instagram, Twitter, all that fun stuff. And let's grow this movement to epic heights. And it's all going to be because of you guys. Thank you so much, and we'll see you next week.